You guys hear me right now? I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. If you could type in, there's a chat box at the top right that you guys should see. I think Andrew just typed the question, but if a few of you could just type in yes, that would be great. Okay. Okay. I got yeses from everybody. All right, I'm going to share my screen here in a second. But if you guys have questions at all throughout the whole thing, you can type them here. I'm pretty much going to be going through some body type stuff, carb cycling, and some other and carb backloading, which is the other one. And then we'll just have like a Q&A at the end where you guys can ask me whatever you feel like, or if you have any specific questions. So bear with me 1 second here while I screen share. You guys see that okay? Whoops. Can everybody see the screen okay? All right, there we go. Got some yeses. Okay, so Diane's saying fuzzy. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Apparently, some of you can hear the music in the background. All right, so here's these are just some slides I'm going to go through real quick. These are the basics. I think a lot of people are struggling with like what to eat, or sometimes I think the 30-day program that we have is a little bit too intense for some people. I just want everybody to know, like, if you're having trouble eliminating all the stuff that's on our standard 30-day, then really, there's no problem with taking a step back and going more towards just focusing on calories and macros. And what I mean by macros is like percentage of carb, percentage of fat, percentage of protein. But right here, if you're not able to follow these basics, it's almost pointless to start going into like carb cycling and carb backloading and getting more detailed. But these are the main things you should be focusing on up front. So protein at every single meal and snack, vegetables or fruit at every meal. The fruit intake, obviously will depend on the person and how you or how sensitive you are to sugar and carbs, and we'll discuss that more in a second. Include healthy fats where possible. So that's things like avocado, olive oil, especially omega-3s, and we'll talk more about that later as well. And then eat starch where it's needed, not ad lib, according to personal requirements, body type, etc. So what that means is your starchy carbs like potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, etc. They're not necessarily bad. And I think some people get on our 30-day program and then they're like afraid to reintroduce carbs, which can go in two directions. I mean, one, if you're very, very carb sensitive, you can go without those starchy carbs for a while. But for a lot of people, especially if you're increasing your activity levels, you're going to need to eventually add starches back in, at least for like one meal of the day, preferably closer to your workout, again, depending on body type. All right, so individually, everyone is built a certain way. So everyone's different. These are the three different body types. So you have ectomorph. So these are people who are typically lean no matter what. Usually people that find it hard to gain weight. On the opposite side here, in the middle here, you have endomorph. So those are people who typically have trouble losing weight, usually heavier side. And then the mesomorph, notice it says the guy we're usually jealous of, can maintain and get lean easily and builds muscle well, V-frame physique. So that's kind of the middle of the road. So those are people who kind of maintain a moderate body fat, if you will, and don't really gain a ton of weight, but again, they're in the middle between the two. If you're having trouble defining what that looks like from a visual standpoint, here you go. So again, ectomorph, mesomorph, and then endomorph. Here we go. Sorry. All right, so here's the difference. If you haven't seen our precision nutrition layout with like recommended calorie intake or portion sizes, that'll lay out everything really well, and I'll bring that up a little bit later. But for ectomorph, so if you're relatively thin or you stay thin most of the time, or you feel like you can eat or get away with eating a lot of carbs, or you cheat a lot and you don't really gain weight, you're probably an ectomorph. The key things are the macros for ectomorphs is going to be higher in carbohydrates. So these numbers right here correspond to percentages. So what this means is for an ectomorph, carbohydrates are probably going to be around 45% of the diet, or 45% of the total calorie intake. Protein, 30%, fat, 25%. Another key thing with ectomorphs, generally, since they have trouble keeping weight on, they should stay away from adrenaline producing products, which would be like caffeine or stimulants, etc., because it'll make it harder for them to keep weight on. All right, the mesomorph. So I'm pretty sure most of our clients are probably going to fall between mesomorph and endomorph. Okay, so mesomorph is kind of in the middle. They're harder to kind of dial in, and basically the biggest thing is finding that sweet spot for fat and carbs, as it says here. And then macros can change based on the person. The best thing to do, honestly, is to test. You have to be diligent with journaling, at least for a 5 to 7 day period, just to see where you're at. And then if you don't respond, then you can obviously either decrease carbs, increase fat, and we'll talk about strategies for doing that as well in a sec. But for a mesomorph, typically their carbs are going to be around 35, maybe 40%. Some of them could be a little bit higher, but that's a typical mesomorph macro percentage layout. All right, and then endomorphs. So again, these are people who have trouble losing weight, generally carrying a lot of body fat, may have been eating, bad their entire life. So they're a little bit more insulin resistant or sugar sensitive. Usually, and this presentation was meant for a different audience. That's why it says gets the best results. But typically these people do lose the most upfront. But for weight loss, carbohydrates is the biggest problem. Okay, so, and then for weight gain, there needs to be control of carb content. But what I want everybody to pay attention to is the macros here. So a lot of people, carbohydrates are way higher than 15%. That should be, on an endomorph type macro rotation. Um, I don't recommend starting at 15% like it says here. So 15, 35, 50. I believe people should start at around 25%. And again, I'm going to go through that in a second here. But the key is keeping carbs low or carb timing, and that's why it says here carb backloading and carb cycling work well when controlled. And then obviously this is for weight gain if somebody's a endomorph looking to gain weight. Does anybody have any questions so far? If you have questions, just type them in right now and I can answer them. All right, so basically this is just saying if you're not addressing macros or you're not completing the basics, so if you're not even eating well, it's pointless in moving forward, in terms of like dialing in to specific percentages, etc. The goal initially is to make sure you're staying within calories and then make sure you're eating real food and minimizing as much processed stuff as you can. And then obviously, like I said from the beginning, having protein at every single meal, and then carbs should be mostly coming from fruits and veggies. And then we can go through. Andrew just asked a question here. That's why I got tripped up here. Explain the last bullet. Bigger meals less often, feeder types. Okay, so two people asked about this, the last bullet point here. So endomorphs, again, this is somebody who has trouble losing a lot of weight, generally a bigger body type. A lot of times, bigger meals less often, so 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day typically works well. And notice it says feeder types, meaning like two big meals a day and then like snacking the rest of the day. I will tell you from experience, I'm probably in between a meso and an endomorph because I was overweight when I was younger. That's typically how I eat. I'll have 2 big meals a day, sometimes just one, and I'll snack the rest of the day, and it just works well for me. The reason is endomorphs typically have a slower metabolism, so they don't do well if they're constantly eating. So if they're eating like every 2-3 hours, which is a common myth, at least in the bodybuilding world, they'll feel more tired because their digestive system is not fast enough to metabolize things, so it takes a little bit longer. So they do better on less frequent, bigger meals. Does that answer your question, Andrew and Lynn? Okay, and then so fats and carbs are the biggest variables. Everyone, if you're having trouble dropping weight or dropping body fat, it's usually a carb or fat issue. What that means is carbs and fats are typically inversely related. So if somebody's on a higher carb diet, then they'll typically be on a lower fat diet. So their diet will be if somebody is not carb sensitive, so like an ectomorph, people who generally are skinnier, if you will, they can tolerate carbs more. So their fat intake is going to be a little bit lower, whereas people who don't tolerate carbs well and need to lose a lot of weight or a lot of body fat will usually need lower carbs and a little bit of higher fat. And then this is just saying carbs is the macronutrient that has the most power to store fat. and that's due to its effect on insulin, because when you eat carbs, you secrete insulin, which makes you store fat. So if there's insulin in your blood, you cannot tap fat stores. All right, we're going to skip through this. We're not going through athlete stuff. All right, so these are the top 4 things that we like to use. So the first one is 1 ingredient food diet. So that means like getting your act together with eating right. So getting on a whole foods based diet where you're eating like chicken and veggies and eggs. So that like 1 ingredient stuff where you're not eating a lot of processed stuff. That's the simplest way to go. Then you have carb cycling or nutrient timing, which notice it says here for most people that's going to be the best, because it allows for flexibility, and it can be customized to most people, especially endomorphs that are going to drop weight. Carb backloading is sort of similar to intermittent fasting. The difference is intermittent fasting, you fast until the afternoon. Carb backloading, you're eating all day, but your carbs are still towards the end of the day. So these are like the 4 different types of things that we usually recommend depending on the person. All right, and then this is breaking down the first one. So 1 ingredient food diet. So eat 1 ingredient foods. Eat a breakfast high in protein and fat for majority of people. Eat tons of vegetables. I did not make this presentation, so excuse the language. Eat clean and free-range foods where money allows. That's just going through buying as high quality protein as you can, obviously within budget. And then eat a balanced macro lunch and dinner. So that just means eating a full meal at lunch and dinner of protein, fat, and carbs. Snack and eat meal sizes as to what your appetite dictates. So, I mean, this is the most basic way to go. Again, this is like not getting too complicated, but if you can't do this and stay within calories, and you find yourself constantly cheating because you're trying to be a little bit more complicated with the diet, or you're trying to cut a lot of stuff out, I would highly suggest scaling back to trying to eat just all whole foods, even if it includes a little bit of dairy like Greek yogurt or something like that, and really focusing on calories and then like basic macros, which we'll go through in a second. Nimi just asked a question, what is carb backloading? I'm about to go through that in 1 second here. So carb cycling basically is timed carb allowance for post-workout window. So it enables enhanced recovery at the right time. It's good for endomorphs gaining weight or trying to lose weight. And it's just saying allows use for simple sugars for enhanced recovery. Basically, this is an example here of what it would look like. But in a nutshell, carb cycling is keeping all of your meals. So notice here you have meal 1, and then you have post-workout. And then this post-workout meal is going to depend upon what time of the day you work out. And then the rest of the meals are basically protein, vegetables, fats. And then if you'll notice here, there's fruit in there. So it's not like you're restricting carbs the entire day. However, anything that's considered a fast carb, so notice in this post-workout here, you have a banana, berries, and then, or if you didn't do a shake and you did a full meal post-workout, here is where you're going to have your things like potatoes, rice, etc. So again, all carb cycling is keeping your meals simple, but avoiding starchy carbohydrates like rice, bananas, fruits, etc., and keeping them towards your post-workout meal. All right, and then I just basically said this. So for carb cycling, you're eating fruit and vegetables for the bulk of your carb content to maximize nutrient density. And then after training, or for some people pre or during training. Um, and that's, we can discuss that if anybody has any questions about that. But you're bringing the carbs into the mix for recovery only. So your fast carbs are used post workout, and the reason is your post workout is the only time you want a high insulin spike, because it's more anabolic if you just finished a workout, and it stimulates protein synthesis, which is what you want post workout. And of course your metabolism is higher, etc. So you're more likely to burn through them, and then you're also not restricting yourself to going like no carb. All right, and then this would be once you have the meal or the eating rotation down to the point where like you're consistently eating protein, veggies, fat, and a little bit of fruit in your main meals, and then you're incorporating the starchy carbs post workout, then you would go to something like this, where you have high and low carb days, and then notice it's saying leg day might be 250 grams. Of course, this is for a male. Torso day, or it could be upper day, would be 150 grams. Basically, all this is saying is on really intense days. So if we're talking about the types of workouts that we do here, on your strength training days, those are typically going to be higher carb. And then on your cardio or no workout days, that's going to be lower carb. Okay, so notice it says rest day, 80 grams. For females, on rest days or days that you're not working out, that's probably going to be more like 50 grams. And then on days that it's like maybe not as intense, or like a cardio day, it's going to be like 100 grams. And then it's going to be like 150 to 200 grams on high intensity days. But again, this is like assuming you got everything else dialed in. The simplest way to think about it, honestly, is just, again, try and have full meals throughout the day, and then avoid starchy carbs until the end of your workouts. All right, carb backloading. Okay, so the biggest difference between carb cycling and carb backloading is carb backloading, you're saving your carbs for the last meal of the day. All right, here's the key thing is this, or carb backloading really works best for evening training. Okay, so if you're not working out in the evening, I would not do carb backloading. That's the same thing with intermittent fasting. That diet typically works really well for people working out in the evening. The good thing about carb backloading is it ties in with natural production and sensitivity to insulin. So basically, like our insulin and stress cycles are pretty cyclical on a daily basis. So it kind of is best to train, late afternoon to evening, from a human standpoint, if you will, in terms of our biological clocks. But that doesn't mean like you can't train in the morning or anything like that. But if you're training in the evening, again, that carb backloading would work. But I don't suggest that because I think it's the hardest. I would still suggest either just sticking to macros or carb cycling, which we'll go through more here in a second. All right, and then this is for these are just listing the benefits of carb backloading. It's perfect for coffee lovers, so people can have their coffee in the morning, and then obviously they don't need, since they're working out in the evening, they don't need as much energy during the day, especially if you are drinking coffee in the morning. Perfect diet when training in the evening, which we already touched on. And still optimizes growth hormone output when sleeping if high glycemic carbs are consumed post-training. So that's just saying your growth hormone is not gonna go down if you're eating carbs just at the end of the day and not during the day. All right, we're gonna skip through this. All right, and this is just a sample meal plan. So notice it's pretty much exactly the same as carb cycling, except you're working out in the evening and you're pushing all of your high glycemic carbs towards the end of the day. All right, and then these are just your carb backloading. These are all your fast carbs. And I'm going to pull up a meal plan, our meal plan page here in a second. All right, so does anybody have any questions on any of that so far? Okay. I'm assuming there's no questions. All right. Now I'm going to try and simplify all this a little bit. All right. So if you're confused right now, don't worry. I'm about to simplify it. All right. So this is what I would suggest doing if you're struggling right now. You need to find out first. You need to find out your BMR or basal metabolic rate. If you've gotten measurements recently, your BMR would be in the measurement file. Okay, so it'll be the number, that baseline number that our software spits out. Otherwise, there's all sorts of online formulas for calculating BMR. And then these are basic calculations here. So notice it's saying if you're sedentary, little or no exercise, then you're going to multiply your BMR. So say my BMR, is 1,500 calories. I'm sedentary, then I'm going to go and multiply 1,500 times 1.2. And whatever number that is, that's going to be my calorie amount. All right. If you're lightly active or moderately active, and it's giving you options here. So like if you're barely getting in 3 days a week, that's lightly active. If you're consistently doing 3 to 5 days, then I would go moderate. And then if you're very active, obviously you use that number. So you take your BMR and then you get a calorie amount for the day by multiplying by one of those factors. So either 1.2, 1.37, 1.55, etc., based on your activity level. Okay. If you're trying to lose weight, you're then going to take away 500 calories per day. Let's see. John's saying any way to zoom in a little bit. Let's see here. Is that better, John? Can you see that now, John? All right, we're going to move forward here. All right, so you basically, like I said, you get your BMR or your basal metabolic rate, multiply it by one of the factors. Okay, if you're trying to drop weight, then you would take away 500 calories per day. Okay, so if I have 1,500 calories, let me just take out my calculator here. If my BMR is 1,500 and I am moderately active, so I'm going to use the 1.55. I'm going to multiply by 1.55, That gives me 2325 per day. I want to lose weight, so I'm going to subtract 500. Okay, that gives me 1825 per day. That's what I'm going to load into my Fitness Pal for my calories that I need to be consuming every single day. Okay? Um, what this is saying is, if this new number, so like if you go through this exercise now and compare, and you've been tracking diligently, or you know how many calories you're consuming, if it's 500 calories above your current intake, do not increase by 500. Okay, only do 50. I wouldn't go more than 100 calories more, just to see what happens, because you don't want to mess around. If you've been consistent and been very strict, you don't want to just add 500 calories in per day. You can, obviously, that can cause you to gain some weight. All right, so after you've done that, after you load in your calories and you know exactly how much you need to eat per day for weight loss, you need to track for one whole week. Okay, it's pertinent. You can't. There's no other way around this. Otherwise, you're just throwing darts at a dartboard. Um, and then divide your calories for that whole week by 7 days. Okay, that's going to give me, or that's going to give you your average calorie intake per day. All right, if you're not dropping weight, then you're going to decrease that number by 10%. And then do it again. And the following week, again, track. You're going to do the same thing. Take your calories for the whole week. If you didn't drop weight and you're looking to drop weight, then you need to decrease your calories again. Now, this is all assuming that you're eating at least 12 to 1,500 calories a day. If you're eating under 1,200 calories a day, this is not going to work, and your body's probably going to be in starvation mode. All right. So that's the simplest way to look at calorie counting. Now, a lot of people don't do this; they just track. And I know that the trainers are messaging you guys as well. But this is the easiest way to do it. Is track for a week. Even if you only do 5 days, obviously divide your total calories. So you're going to add up all the calories for those 5 days or 7 days, and then either divide by 5 or divide by 7 and get your average. Okay. This next bullet point. So this is what I suggest. As long as you're an endomorph. Okay, so if you're struggling dropping weight and your body fat percentage is relatively high, so above 25%, I would start with these macros. All right, and then I will go to my Fitness Pal just so you guys know how that looks. So this is our login for my Fitness Pal. So if you want to change your macros, you literally just go to goals and then change goals. And then you're going to do custom. Okay. And then here is where you change everything. So you're going to change calories. So say your calorie intake is, I don't know, 1,500. Here is where you can change your percentages. So if I want to change them, I can go 25%. Let me see what we had here. So 25, 35, 40. Okay, so it's that simple. It even changes it for you to add up to 100%. Okay, so now you have, this is how many grams of carbs I should be having a day. This is how much protein. This is how much fat. And my Fitness Pal will just set limits for you for the day once you load these goals in. So when you go to food, it's going to have the numbers here for you already. Okay, so these are the macros that I would suggest, um, like I said, to start off with. And then based on calories, so like if you're diligently tracking calories and you're not dropping weight and you're at above 1200, you know, you're consuming enough calories, and the goal is more fat loss and weight loss, and you're not dropping, then I would down or upregulate the carb and fat percentages. Meaning, if you're not seeing results and your carbohydrates are at 25%, then the following week I would try like 20% and then up your fat by 5%. Protein is always going to stay anywhere from 25 to 35, depending on the body type. But it should stay for endomorphs. It should stay relatively high. It should stay around 30%. All right, that's one way to do everything and get the numbers that you need to be at. This is the other way. So if you want like a more simplified version, basically you do 1 gram per pound of body weight for protein. Okay, so say I'm gonna type here, I'm 180 pounds. I'm gonna do 180 grams of protein. Okay, and then you're gonna multiply that by 4 to get the number of calories. Okay, so that's protein calories. Okay, and then basically you're gonna have to back into the rest. This way is a little bit more complicated. That's why I suggest just using the macros by loading them into MyFitnessPal based on your BMR and calorie intake. Because this way is a little bit more complicated because you'd have to do percentages and stuff like that. But if you guys have questions or have any trouble with this, obviously you can just ask one of us to help you. This right here, so the next bullet point here is just saying if you cannot hit these macros, it's pointless to do carb cycling or backloading. Okay, so if you're having trouble just staying within calorie range or staying within macros, you know, these percentages here, then carb cycling and backloading and getting all complicated, I mean, it's really pointless. You know, we should try and, like I said, if you've done the 30-day program or maybe you got on it for a couple of days and got discouraged, I would just literally try and stick to macros by eating real food, even if that means you're eating a little bit of sprouted or whole grain bread and oatmeal and Greek yogurts in your diet. It's much more effective to stay within macros and calorie ranges than it is to yo-yo and just kind of like, you know, fall off because you think the diet's too strict for you from, you know, the carb restriction and stuff like that. All right, any questions so far? All right, and then this is just kind of summarizing. You know, so carb cycling is basically, again, eat high glycemic carbs only after the workout, lower carb on non-workout days and cardio days, and then carb backloading is you're eating high glycemic carbs only at the end of the day. And if you're training in the morning, carb backloading is not a good idea unless you absolutely for sure know that you're horrible at metabolizing sugar and are an endomorph. So, I mean, this does take trial and error. There's no like one size fits all way to do things. Of course, you can, you know, just track calories, but you know, we can prove over and over again that calories in, calories out does not work because we have a ton of clients right now that track their calories, that are eating or making poor food selections that are not dropping weight. So obviously it's never just about calories. It's also about quality of food and carb timing. All right, so Supplements. So for fat loss and weight loss, these are things that definitely help. The gut is commonly avoided or left out in terms of weight loss. So probiotics are key, especially if you have digestive issues. A lot of us have grown up taking antibiotics, which unfortunately kill all of your gut bacteria. So, repopulating your gut with probiotics is a good idea because it speeds up digestion, and it'll help you actually break up food. Because if you're not breaking up your food, obviously you can't absorb things properly. Omega-3 fatty acids. This is a huge one, and it's another huge deficiency. If you're not eating a lot of fish, you definitely need to supplement with omega-3s, either fish oil, krill oil, something like the Udo's oil, which we carry. And that Udo's oil I highly recommend for females, especially because it has the right balance of fats for hormone production. L-carnitine is another one. So 500 milligrams or 1 gram pre-workout. That actually helps release fat stores. That one's proven. And carnitine or L-carnitine, just so everybody knows, is very hard to get high doses because the foods that contain carnitine, one of the biggest ones is steak, but you'd have to eat like 16 ounces of steak every day to get that same amount. Caffeine pre-workout, if not burned out. So that means if you're not like taxed all the time, or you don't have something called adrenal fatigue. So that means like if you're constantly grabbing caffeine because you're dragging, you probably have adrenal fatigue, and it's probably not a good idea to use more caffeine pre-workout. But caffeine does work because it speeds up metabolism, especially pre-workout, and especially if you're in a low insulin state, meaning you haven't had fast digesting carbs, and then you take caffeine pre-workout, or like for instance in the morning, if you work out in the morning and you have not eaten breakfast and you have caffeine, it's going to stimulate more fat burning or upregulate metabolism. Coconut oil. So coconut oil, if you're dragging through the day and you're eating very little carbs, coconut oil is a good thing to take because it burns more like a carb and not like a fat. So that means like just taking like a tablespoon. It's a easy source of quick calories, and it'll also help you with energy. So like if you're only eating protein, fat, and veggies in the beginning of the day, and you feel like your energy is low, I would highly suggest taking or adding some coconut oil to your diet. Green tea is a proven one for stimulating metabolism and burning fat. It's not a huge upregulator, but it definitely helps if you consistently do it. All right, and then magnesium, the brand we always suggest is Calm. Besides omega-3s, this is probably the second biggest deficiency in the United States. So I highly suggest magnesium. If you're always stressed, if you have trouble sleeping, you are probably magnesium deficient. And if you are, it'll make it very hard to drop weight as well. Greens powder, so that's more for detoxification, especially if you're having trouble eating veggies. We always suggest adding that to your diet. There's tons of brands out there. We carry Amazing Grasses and a few other ones, but that's a good supplement to add because it has probiotics and enzymes in it as well. But greens have specific nutrients in them that shuttle toxins out of fat. Okay, so body fat tends to store toxins, and if you don't consume greens or certain things like chlorophyll and vitamin K2, it makes it very hard to shuttle those things out of your body. So if you're low on veggies, I would definitely suggest doing something like that. For females, okay, so during the cycle or your cycle for the month, chocolate powder is clinically proven to raise dopamine levels which cuts cravings. Okay, so I know during that time of the month, females typically have cravings for sugar and chocolate, and that's one of the reasons chocolate is craved. But there's nothing wrong with adding chocolate powder. Obviously, the darker the better, but that will cut your cravings for sugar if you consume that either in smoothies or hot chocolate, etc. All right, and then I put this in here. I just wanted to touch on this quickly, but cardio. Okay, there's four different types of cardio, or there's four different ways cardio can be broken up. You have slow. Okay, so this is your typical 3 mile per hour walk on a treadmill, which is common in the bodybuilding world. Okay, slow cardio is for people, honestly, that want to burn extra calories but don't have a lot of weight to lose, and they're trying to retain a lot of muscle mass. That is why you see bodybuilders doing like hours, or if they're coming up, if they have a show coming up, they're going to do 1, 2, 3 hours of slow, low intensity cardio every week. And it's because that cardio does tap fat stores faster, but it does not burn a lot of calories. So, again, that's for people who are very, very muscular already and are trying to retain muscle mass. It's not that it doesn't help. It's definitely good to reduce stress levels. But if you're doing this type of cardio 2-3 times a week and you need to lose weight, it's probably not very effective unless you're like that stressed out. So that's more of a recovery thing. Moderate cardio. So this is what you commonly see everyone do at the gym, right? So you go to the gym and you see everyone, most or more particularly females, typically tend to do more cardio because they, I guess, they typically don't like to go on the weightlifting floor, and there's multiple reasons for that. But this type of cardio, okay, so this is like a light jog for a long period of time, is actually proven to raise stress levels. Okay, so it is not effective for dropping body fat and weight. So I would not do that type of cardio. It's not the most effective if you're trying to drop weight, and that's why you typically see a lot of people doing that and not getting results. Okay, the two types of cardio, or the three that I would suggest, is slow for recovery only and decreasing stress levels. So that's like once a week. And then your other cardio days, and this is how we train in our cardio sessions, is moderately intense to intense. So moderately intense would be like a hard run for 25-30 minutes where you're like pretty much at like 80-90% failure. So you've almost dying but not pushing it to the max. And then intense is your typical HIIT training, where you would do something like 30-second intervals of all out. So like sprints, and then coming down and like jogging for like 3 minutes and then sprint again. And this should last relatively short compared to the other types. So this should only be done for 15-20 minutes. Okay. This causes you to burn more calories than the slow type of cardio. Yes, the slow type of cardio taps fat calories, or you're using more calories from fat, but you have to do this for a lot longer than you do this. So it's more effective than the slow type of cardio. This is going to take you like an hour, where this is 15-20 minutes, and you get the same calorie burn effect. And you also upregulate growth hormone, etc., which drops body fat. All right, then the last couple of things here. So stubborn female fat loss. So again, this is assuming you're doing everything else that you need to do, or you're eating a relatively whole food based diet. You're tracking calories, and you're still not seeing results, or if you're just looking for something extra, this is also possible. Okay, increase omega 3s. I would say that's number one. All right, the easiest way to do this is do a loading phase of half your body weight percentage in grams. Okay, most of the omega 3 and fish oil studies done out there are with big doses, not the 1 gram dose that you typically see on a bottle. And this is coming from Precision Nutrition, which is that program that we're certified through, and it was written by Dr. John Berardi. So it's all science based. So you would do half your body weight. I'm sorry, it's half your body fat percentage, not weight. So if I'm 23% body fat, then I'm going to do like 11 grams, which is a lot, but it works. You're going to do 11 grams of fish oil per day for 2 weeks, and then you're going to cut back to around 6 grams per day. Okay, and then you can divide that in doses of like 2 grams. But I'm telling you right now, omega 3s do a whole lot for your body, and they will definitely stimulate weight loss because it is a rampant deficiency. All right, and then these two are for the omega 3s can work for males as well, even though it says stubborn female fat loss. For females, though, these two are very good at stimulating fat loss. So yohimbe is a minor stimulant. It's actually a bark, but it actually binds to alpha receptors, and that's what causes females to store weight, especially around hips, legs, etc. So, but the key is it works better in a low insulin state. So if you're I wouldn't eat or I wouldn't take this around a high carbohydrate meal. All right, and then forskolin is the other one. Yohimbe binds to alpha receptors. Forskolin actually downregulates alpha receptors. Okay, and again, alpha receptors is what causes females to store body fat more so than males. Males have more beta receptors around the legs and stomach region, and this is why females typically store more body fat in the lower area. And then estrogen issues. Okay, that's another one. There's a supplement called DIM. Okay, if you're having hormonal balance issues, or you suspect you have estrogen dominance, which is pretty common nowadays, there's a supplement called DIM that'll actually downregulate bad estrogens. All right, and then last but not least, you got holy basil, ashwagandha, and then sleep aids. This is all if you're stressed. So if your stress levels are through the roof, these are adaptogenic herbs that you can take to downregulate stress. And then down here, I just wrote, so insulin is the fat storage hormone, and it's actually, that's what's linked to heart disease. It's not cholesterol. The reason I wrote that is because a lot of people are afraid to eat fat. Fat is not bad, and cholesterol is not bad as well. It's actually the size of your cholesterol that's linked to certain heart diseases. But insulin is the main culprit, which is from processed carbohydrates and the amount of sugar we have in our diet. And wheat is another big issue causer. So I would definitely suggest ignoring or avoiding wheat if you can. All right. So in summary, I can post this as well, but I would start here if you're having trouble, and then start with these macros, and then either decrease percentages based on results each week, and then you can add some of these supplements in, especially for females. I would definitely, if you suspect that you're doing everything right, you can try these, the yohimbe and the forskolin, which those can be bought at like Vitamin Shop. Some supplements have it in there, like Redline and stuff like that. Those are fat burning supplements. I think that's all I have to cover. Does anyone have any questions? anyone really confused? And then, guys, I don't know if you guys are utilizing the website, but there is a ton of stuff. Let me bring this up here. Okay, there's a ton of stuff on the website that I think a lot of people are not taking advantage of. Um, you have the kitchen makeover, which we've recently posted a video about probably about a month ago. We updated this whole website. You have the shopping list, the kitchen makeover. These are probably the two most important docs. I will be uploading a new version of the shopping list that you see here that includes more grain carbs in there and then organic Greek yogurt. But this shopping list is pretty helpful if you're having trouble. And it goes through portion sizes, etc. And then you also have the body type thing that we just went through. So like if I go to this, it kind of tells you like portion sizes if you're ectomorph, mesomorph, and then endomorph. And then notice again, endomorphs has the lowest amount of carbs out of all of the body types. There's a ton of recipes, meal ideas. You have crockpot recipes. I mean, there's a lot of resources. I'm not sure if everyone's utilizing these. The smoothies is probably one of the best things I would take advantage of, especially this super shake one and this metabolic smoothies. They're broken up by protein and carb, protein and fat. And then the super shakes is broken up by post-workout or any time, meaning like timing of the day to have those smoothies. So like I'll open up this one. So like this is, so you got protein, which is the P, you have protein and carb, which would be best utilized post-workout, and then you have protein and fat. So the rest of these can be had all day, any time of the day. All right, so what doses for the Yohimbe and the Forskolin? That's a good question. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one, Amanda. I will post it because I don't remember the exact doses, but there are some supplements that have in it. They have Yohimbe already in it, like Redline has it, which it's probably at a good dose. But I'll look up. I don't want to give you an answer that's not science based. Andrew, once you have hit your desired weight, what's the best type of diet to maintain? All right, so if you've hit your desired weight, honestly, it depends on your goal. If you're just trying to maintain what you have, then I would honestly set your calories based on whatever the calorie amount you need to like maintain weight. And then I would just do a standard macro for like a mesomorph. So meaning like probably like 35 to 40% carbohydrates and then like 30% protein and then the rest fat. So basically you're going to wind up just eating balanced meals, and depending on your type, if you're fast metabolizers, you're going to eat more meals. If you're not, then you would eat less meals, but you would do full meals. And then I would still do some type of carb timing. So you can probably have like complex carbs, so like oats and rice, etc., at your main meals, but anything like sugary or like white potatoes and stuff like that, you would still keep to post workout. And of course that'll change depending on the goal. Like if you want to increase muscle, decrease fat still and maintain weight, etc. Any other questions? Anybody have any questions about, I don't know, meals, calories? I'll give you guys another minute or two, but yeah, I mean that's the basics. I will we'll continue to do these webinars on different topics. I'm gonna see if there's a dial-in as well that you guys can call in. I think it'll probably be easier just to talk through this if you guys have specific questions. But weekly we'll try and do this, or if not bi-weekly, on different topics. Next week we'll probably do one on, actually next week is Christmas, so probably not. The following week we'll probably do one on, like, I'll lay out like meal plans and suggestions based on the type and based on carb cycling, etc. Alrighty, well, if you guys don't have any other questions, that's pretty much it. Appreciate you guys getting on this, and if you guys have any feedback or anything, email me. I'm not sure if you have my email, but I will type it here. Most of you probably have it. If you have anything that you want us to talk about, just email me directly. All right, you guys have a good night.